Okay, so my name's Victoria Lees. I'm supporting the Green Party in Redditch this year. So just essentially, I'm going to quickly just kind of go through our mini manifesto, essentially, which are the main points that we're sort of putting forward at a local level. Obviously, these points are more suited to local campaigning than national campaigning. And the mini manifesto that we've put together for this year's local election kind of covers 8 points. And we just want to recognise the important work that's done by local community projects. We think that that's very important, and they do a lot of work for local residents, and that the local community would be much at a loss without those local community projects. So we support those. We accept that the importance of green spaces and natural habitats play a very important role in all of our lives, and we want to ensure that any proposed changes of use will go through public consultation. And there needs to be a balance between the needs of the local community and the needs of the town in general. We recommend that any new build housing should be carbon neutral and designed to enhance the community, create a great place for people to live and work. Want to work with building firms to emphasise the put an emphasis on sustainability. And the Green Party in general, they are trying to work towards making sure that all new builds are built to passive house standards, so that they really are sustainable and affordable for people to live in. We are hoping to support this opportunity for a green recovery. We see at the situation that we're in at the moment, there's a lot of opportunity for us to build back with green jobs and things like that. We would like to introduce some citizens panels so that local community have more of a say in policies that are being implemented in their local area, and also ensuring that communities have a chance to talk about what they would like to be introduced to help introduce climate change.
Can I ring my little bell, Victoria? Could you hurry up?
Sorry. And finally, we're into active travel, divestment from fossil fuels, and we've also pledged our support to local libraries, especially in terms of this new redevelopment of Redditch Town Centre. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you very much. Could we move on to Juliet, our independent candidate?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to the organisers for this opportunity. I'm Juliet Brunner, married mum of 3 with 2 wonderful grandchildren and 5 little dogs. I'm seeking re-election as an independent Worcestershire County Councillor for Arrow Valley East Division, and I'm also the current Borough Councillor for Matchborough, a role that I've had a privilege to serve for 17 years. Although retiring early, I've also enjoyed a long career as a nurse in the NHS. And during COVID-19, I had the opportunity to use my skills once more. I believe to truly represent a community, you must live within it. I've lived in Matchborough for over 30 years. I shop locally, used public transport, walked the same pathways and roads. And I have been known to walk my dogs in Ipsley Meadows. I chose to become an independent because with the alternative, I had no longer any shared values. I came into politics to represent the community I'm privileged to serve. I believe in consulting and working with the community is an essential part of the work of a councillor. I believe that we should not give up our public open spaces or greenbelt to vacuous proposals. There comes a time when we should say enough is enough. Stop building on every blade of grass. For many years, there's been a continuous erosion in our greenbelt that has caused extreme pressure on our road infrastructure, schools and hospitals. Whilst we need new housing in Redditch, we should be using the brown sites. If COVID-19 has taught us anything, it's the appreciation of our green spaces for our continued well-being and mental health. So to round up, I'm an experienced councillor who wants to make a difference to the quality of people's lives. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much, Juliet, for the independence. And Andrew Bevan for Labour now, please, Andrew.
Hi there, I'm Andrew Bevan. I'm your Labour Party candidate for Matchborough in the borough elections. A little bit about myself. I've lived in Redditch for over 30 years now, since I was a kid. So basically, in regards to Matchborough, obviously, firstly, the most important issue, I think, for a lot of residents is Ipsley Meadows. So I'm totally in agreement with Juliet there, that it has to stay a green space. This sort of unconsulted sort of land grab by the Conservative Party is totally unacceptable. It's not the first time they tried to do something like that with the two centres. In 2019, I stood, and myself and the Winyates candidate worked with a local campaign that did a lot of petitioning, and we were able to get them to U-turn on that policy. Unfortunately, they've now reverted back to what they were trying to do previously, but we shall campaign again, and if elected in May, I will work again with residents to try and make that happen. Talking to a lot of young families in the area, I've noticed that childcare costs are extortionate. I'd like to address that with by building a cooperative creche. So obviously it's a part of our Labour Party manifesto, which is online if you want to have a look at it. It's redditchlabour.org. So just for the local area, I'd like to build a cooperative creche. It'll be run for the community by the community. Gives local parents a chance to run a business, have equal stake in it, and provide a much needed cheaper alternative to childcare. Because I think childcare costs, I mean, for some of the people I've been talking to, it's sort of 2/3 of their wage. I think, you know, it's getting to the point where people are having to choose between looking after the children and working because, you know, at this stage, you know, you may as well not work because of the cost of childcare. Also, I would like to build a children's play area, ponds, because there is no sort of local facilities for young families. I'd like to address that, obviously. And also in regard to, obviously, Juliet's former colleagues with their cutting of the VCS rents, the charitable rents to all the local charitable services, your ideas, community and youth projects in Matchborough, they've been informed that they will be having their 70% charitable rates reduced, which is just, I mean, considering what they do for the community, hundreds of children autistic. Sorry, do I need to hurry up?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll wrap it up. So basically, I want to work with them to try and get that charitable rent back and work with them going forward. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And to round off this little roundup, we go to Lib Democrat candidate. Put my teeth back in. Andy Thompson. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the panel who put together this hustings. Our invitation tonight is gratefully appreciated. On May the 6th, you have a choice. You can vote for the same old broken politics that has held Redditch and Worcestershire back for years, or you can vote for change through the Liberal Democrats. Unlike the Conservatives, who are busy having an ugly and unprofessional public spat between cliques within their party via the letter page of the Standard, the Liberal Democrats are focused on working hard for our communities, not just at election time, but all year round, targeting the issues that matter to you and getting things done for our communities. This year, my colleague Mark Tomes and I have been working hard to address issues of fly tipping, potholed roads, dangerous footpaths, antisocial behaviour, speeding vehicles. We've also been heavily involved in the campaign to save Ipsley Meadow from development. We launched our own campaign back in December 2020, where we emailed people that we had contact with, getting them to sign up and express their voice against this development. We forced the Conservatives to apply the brakes when we got the local press, including the BBC, to run the story. We know that this fight is far from over, and we will continue to do all we can to stop this development after May the 6th. We have ambitions for a clean, green and safe Redditch and Worcestershire. At the county level, we commit to declaring a climate emergency on day one and to exceed the current county strategy of reducing carbon emissions by 50%, carbon emissions of 50% by 2030, doubling the size of low carbon sector by 2030, and tripling energy production from renewables, renewable generation by 2030. My invitation to you is this: don't waste your vote on the same old, same old. On May the 6th, vote for change. Vote for Liberal Democrats.
Thank you very much, Andy, and thank you very much all our candidates for a very, very good presentation for all of them. Now we'll move right on, I think, to our questions. There'll be 3 questions, and they'll be asked by 3 different questioners. and each candidate will have around 2 to 3 minutes to answer the questions. So let's start this off with Hazel, if you're still there, Hazel.
Yes, I'm still here.
First, can we have your question?
Yep. This may be duplicating some of what you've said, or indeed all of what you've said. But if you are successfully elected on May the 6th to Redditch Borough Council or Worcestershire County Council, or indeed both, could you give us an idea as to what your top 3 initiatives will be? And how would you press to make those happen?
Well, thank you very much, Hazel. I think that's a very pertinent question. It'll be short, but I'm sure that our candidates will have a lot to say on these issues and their ambitions for their constituency and for Redditch in the future, Redditch and Arrow Valley in the future. Can I go first to our Green candidate, to Victoria Lees? Victoria.
Hi there. I did previously, as you said, go through the mini manifesto, which covers the 8 points that we're sort of campaigning on at the moment. But if I was to pick a top 3 of those, I would first of all say that I think it's personally very important that we're starting to acknowledge the climate emergency. Now, Worcestershire County Council and Redditch Borough Council have indicated that there is a climate emergency and have sort of made nods towards that. But I don't believe that there's been any sort of concrete policies put in place by either the county council or the borough council as of yet. So I would really push towards starting to try and implement strategies with all new policies going forward that address the climate emergency and address the climate change, the need to do things for climate change. And one of the other things that I would say is a top priority is housing. Housing is very important. There is a lack of it in the area, but we need to focus on housing that is going to be affordable and sustainable for people in the local community. We need to try and ensure that all new developments are not encroaching on greenbelt sites or on sites that have important wildlife and things like that. So there needs to be proper studies of sites, and I do personally believe there are plenty of sites within the Redditch area that could be utilised better for housing rather than building on fresh virgin sites in the area. And another thing that I would say that's important to us is to include local people in decision making, so have more availability for people to give their views on things that are happening in the local community, and make sure that people's views are represented at a level in council, so that any changes and things going forward that happen, local people have had their chance to properly consult on and give their views on, so that it's much more of a community feel to what's going on in the council, rather than just things feel like they're being dictated to people a lot of the time. And I would say that that's our top 3 sort of priorities at the moment. How much time I've taken there, but
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you very much, Hazel, for your question. Do you have a comeback?
No, I'm very conscious that Juliet didn't hear the whole question though.
Okay, well, it's actually Juliet's turn to answer next. Juliet, could you repeat it for her then?
Yes, very quickly, Juliet, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. If you are elected on the 6th of May, in your case, it would be to Worcestershire County Council. Can you give us an idea as to what your top 3 initiatives will be and how you would press for those?
Right, so bearing in mind, I haven't had as long as anyone else to come up with this. Quickly, my 3 priorities would be, one would be the Alexandra Hospital, getting services back to our hospital. I think we've been let down terribly, and we really need to hold Worcestershire Acute Hospitals Trust and the government to account on that one. The other issue is around highways, and I have been working to renew a lot of LED lighting in Arrow Valley East. Really want to carry on with that so people feel safer. along with the highways are the potholes, the block gullies, and the unmown and uncut hedges, which are always a big problem. The other issue as well is antisocial behaviour. We have a real problem in our community centres just now, and I will work with the police. I set up a task force before, working with all different agencies to actually give, a lot of it was young people, and it was to give those young people something to do. We introduced social intervention football. We did work with the youth centre at Arravale. So there's plenty of opportunities again to get back in and work with the community and partners on the ASB. And last but by no means least is the meadows and the cemetery. Now, people will say, oh, Worcestershire has nothing to do with Redditch Borough Council. Now, with regards to actually making the decision, that is correct. But the highways, the lighting, the archaeology, the ecology, pardon, and the public open spaces, that is all Worcestershire County Council. We will need to work together very, very tightly on that. And I certainly will be working with whoever's elected in Matchborough to get that goal and stop that cemetery.
Thank you very much, Juliet, for your answer to that question. Can I ask Andrew Bevan to go next, please, on this question?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, obviously, top three initiatives. Redditch has some of the lowest wages in Worcester, and obviously not just in Matchborough, in the Labour Party and Redditch in general, we want to try and address that balance. So we're looking to appoint a cooperative development worker to get more cooperatives off the ground. Obviously, with me, it will be the cooperative creche, so we can provide young families with a much cheaper alternative, so they have more money to take home with them. Obviously, second of all, the meadow. Been working very hard with my two Labour candidates, Sharon Harvey and Joanna Kane, to basically put a stop to this. We've had a look at the deeds. We tried to dig into the corporation that built the houses in 1973. It still seems to be not as solid as we'd have liked in regards to that, because we're looking at basically trying to find a covenant to protect the land. But certainly I would happily work with Juliet and anyone else that's completely opposed to this if they get into power, because I think what the Conservatives have done is an absolute disgrace, to be honest. It should remain a green space. They've not consulted the public on this. They've chosen Ipsy Meadow because it's the cheaper option. And yeah, I want to give residents a stake, not just in their local area, not just give them a voice, give them a stake, give them a purpose in the redevelopment of our town. Also with the two centres, yeah, there needs to be some redevelopment there. As I said, I would like to build a children's play area and do it at the pond. But any other work that we do on there, it needs to be adding, not subtracting. And the Conservative Council seem obsessed with cutting things and taking services away. I think it's important that we involve residents and work with them to give them more, not take things away. So yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Very quickly in on that.
Please.
It seems to me the only stake residents have is through our vote. We don't seem to be consulted about anything other than that.
Yeah, I would totally agree, and I want to readdress that, because the whole point of you electing us is that we're we're there to act upon your behalf, to give you more, or get rid of certain things, redevelop certain areas. I think that's the whole point of local politics, or politics in general. You're there to elect us, to work on your behalf, to give you what you want and need. You pay a lot of council tax. The Conservatives have increased council tax, and at the minute you're getting less for more, and I don't think that's right at all. I think you've got to work smart and work around. Obviously, we're having a lot of funding issues from central government while we have a Conservative government. But I think with using innovative ideas and thinking about things, you can still get and provide essential services for people.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I think that was a good session for everybody there. It makes me very confident in the future of Redditch and Arrow Valley. If you all could get elected, that would be brilliant. Can I move on?
Has Andy answered it?
Oh, Andy,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Sorry, he did.
Andy,
Beg your
I'm
pardon.
very sorry.
No, he did. He did.
Senior,
He
did he
I
answer?
didn't know.
He didn't. No.
Oh, no, you didn't. Sorry. I thought
There's
you
two
had.
Andys.
Mea culpa. So please, Andy, could you answer the question, Hazel's question?
Certainly. I think there are a lot of issues that Redditch needs to address, particularly as we come out of COVID, and what that's going to look like, we don't know yet. So I think we have to evaluate where we are when the pandemic is not brought to a close, but brought to a manageable level. But there are things that, irrespective of that, are really important to me. And one is working to address local issues. As Liberal Democrats, this is the crux of what we do. We work for our communities. We work with our communities to address those local issues: the potholed roads, the dangerous footpaths, the fly tipping, the antisocial behaviour, all that kind of stuff. Those local issues that go on day in, day out in our communities. Number one priority is to work to address those and to make our communities the best they can be for the people that live and work there. The second priority is for housing. We certainly do need more housing in Redditch, but it has to be affordable. We need to look at social housing in a way that that gives more choice, but social housing that's built on green credentials as well. You know, I live in Churchill. The estate I live on has got solar panels on most of the buildings' roofs. They're built with kind of natural insulation. We need to be thinking creatively about how we build our properties, but we do need to build them. But that said, that mustn't be at the expense of our green spaces, our parks and our open spaces. And as somebody who's worked and campaigned to protect not only Ipswich Meadow, but the area just off Moon's Moat in Churchill, by where I live, where there's a proposal to develop 23 houses on a slither of land that takes away woods and habitat. We need to be stopping that kind of development. We need to be looking at brownfield sites in and around Redditch. So, absolutely, Ipswich Meadows, protecting Ipswich Meadow, but I think that's part of a wider piece around protecting green space and open land. So that would be my three priorities, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy, and sorry we nearly missed you out there. Okay, Hazel, thanks very much for that. Let's move on to question 2, and I think Steve is ready to ask his question. Please, if you could, Steve.
Thank you, Chair. I think, following Councillor Dormer's comments describing this event, I think I must first put on record it's the first time I've ever been called left-wing in my life. But on the flip side, I was recently described as a spineless, unprincipled lackey of Dormer because I insisted on removing some offensive and potentially libelous posts from our Facebook page. So if I'm getting it from both ends, maybe I'm getting it right in the middle. But the question I'd like to ask you is actually a three-parter, and I think first of all I need to contextualise it as much as anything for the benefit of anybody who might subsequently be viewing this event. On both a national and local level, there's an increasing concern over the loss of green open spaces, whether for housing or other developments, and an awareness that linking existing green space to create natural corridors should be at the forefront of environmental policies, a strategy that the Council is committed to supporting in its own policy documents. Now, the Council has made much play of the fact that any new cemetery will be, and I quote, green, open and accessible, unquote. However, with regard to the proposed Ipswich Meadow development, I've been told by some local residents that Councillor Dormer told them it will be fenced and planted with bushes. Now, obviously that's hearsay and he's not here to either confirm or deny that. But in addition, in the initial site assessment report of July 2019, they estimated development costs that included between £90,000 to £150,000 for boundary treatment, fences, etc., and £30,000 to £50,000 for entrance gates. Now, currently that meadow is accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and is used for a multiplicity of recreational activities. That being the case, I would like to ask the panel the following. Firstly, whether you agree with the assertion that despite the land being used as a cemetery, there will be no loss of green open space amenity, as has been previously stated. Secondly, if it went ahead, to what extent you believe current activities could continue and how appropriate would that be? And finally, in light of previous planning applications for residential development in the immediate area being granted after recognition that Ipsley Meadow compensates for the lack of personal open space and gardens by providing the recreational green open space needed to satisfy the planning committee, is it ethically appropriate for the council to request the planning committee to, in effect, ignore its previous planning criteria and renege on its earlier decisions by granting a change of use submission for the meadow?
Well, thank you very much, Steve. Wow, that's some question. So just to summarize, probably, if I could, we're talking about loss of open green spaces. We're talking about the costs of developing Ipsley Meadow as a cemetery. We're talking about loss of open spaces, and we're talking about the, I think it's the ethics, I think, of planning committee decisions. Could I ask, to start on this rather complicated question, could I ask Juliet to start on question 2? Independent candidate Juliet.
Sorry about that. Having a few problems with the buttons. Thank you very much. A not unexpected question with regards to the loss of green space. I mean, it is absolutely a travesty. I've been there with my children, we've sledded down there, we've had such fun. And if I could just go back to COVID-19, that meadow made a huge difference to many of us during that time. It is absolutely contemptible that they're even considering that. With regards to the cost, I'm not sure how many people are familiar with what Ivan has come up with regards to the extension of the Abbey Cemetery, but that has got to be far cheaper and far more environmentally friendly than taking a field that is much treasured by the community. And with regards to ethics, I'm just speechless. I am. I have to say I'm speechless that the planning committee are expected to ignore the law, but there is always the review that could happen afterwards. I mean, I just have to say, call me a NIMBY if you like, but I certainly cannot support this, and I will be doing all I can to help show that this is the wrong place for a cemetery, and the Abbey extension is by far the best option. And certainly I've been asked about leisure in the cemeteries, and I certainly wouldn't want anyone flying a kite or playing frisbee over my dad's grave. So how they could even say that, oh yes, it's going to be leisure, and then on the other hand say they're going to put fences and bushes. So a bit contradictory, but certainly something I'll not support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Juliet. Next person to have a go at this would be Andrew Bevan. What do we think about this, Andrew? Green spaces, costs of developing Ipsley Meadow, open spaces replacing it, and the machinations of the planning committee. Andrew.
Well, firstly, I mean, I'll come straight to ethics if I may. I mean, there are none with this. I mean, they've literally tried to push through a change of use without any consultation with the public. This sort of nonsense of it's, oh, you know, we've got 26 other sites. Myself and my two colleagues I mentioned previously spent the last few months trying to push for these 26 sites that Matt Dormer has assured us, who's decided not to join us today. We had to request a freedom of information to get those 26 sites because he refused to give them. He would just give back and forth to the nonsense. There's nothing about an Abbey cemetery extension, which I think, yes, I think is a fantastic idea. Personally, something that myself and my two colleagues have looked into is Edgy Oak Lane in Ashford Bank. It currently has 10 years worth of provision at the moment. There is a field adjacent to that, which you would need to do a land purchase to buy, but you could easily expand from there. Obviously, the Conservative Council aren't interested in that because it's very much in their territory in terms of voters. So again, you know, lack of ethics there. I think it's absolutely criminal to take away an essential green space at any time, regardless of COVID. I mean, Juliet said it perfectly. You know, everybody uses it. It's vital. We need to keep it. So in no way, shape or form would I ever support this nonsense suggestion. Obviously, the long-term cost, I believe, is upwards of £800,000 to transform that into a cemetery. I mean, you're not going to have, yeah, it would be a green space, I suppose, but it's not the kind of green space it is now. People aren't going to be able to, you know, play with their kids there and have a picnic, you know, surrounded by bloody graves, are they? So, I mean, forgive me for the language, but like, it's just utter nonsense. So, yeah, it's totally unethical. It's they've not consulted the public, and yeah, I'm in total agreement with Juliet. It's just a disgrace, and I will not support it.
Thank you very much, Andrew. To attack this question next, could we have Lib Dems and Andy Thompson? Andy.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and answer the questions in the order that they were posed. So in terms of the loss of use, I find it very hard to see how the current access and the current freedom for which, you know, people can use the site would be maintained if the site is turned into a cemetery. Certainly can't see the same type of activities going on, and I think the other candidates have alluded to it. It would be, for me, morally and ethically wrong to have people having picnics and playing football, throwing frisbees, flying kites, whatever, on people's graves or on their memorials. You know, having recently lost my mom, I certainly wouldn't want that on her memorial. In terms of the ethics, the way this has been approached for me is wrong. It's been pushed through. It's the cheapest option for the council. And I believe that the decision is already made. I believe that no matter what they may say between now and May the 6th, that come May the 7th, this decision is back on the table without change. I find it wholly inappropriate that it's been done in this way without looking at other sites in detail, particularly as this site, I believe, was marked as not suitable in a previous survey.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've campaigned to stop this development, and I will continue to campaign along with Mark Tomes, who I have to say has been doing a fantastic job of representing my party, the Liberal Democrats. But neither of us will support this. Neither of us can support this. And whatever happens on May the 6th, whether we're elected or otherwise, we will continue to fight this development.
Thank you very much indeed, Andrew. Can I turn to Victoria for a view on this? Loss of space, open spaces, Victoria, very green subject. The cost of this Ipsley Meadow development, open spaces, where are they to replace the redevelopment of the meadow? And what about these ethics and the planning committee that we're hearing about? Victoria.
Thank you. Again, I'll try and go through the sort of points in order. The first one was, would we agree that there's going to be no loss of green open space with this proposal? And obviously it's preposterous to say that there's going to be no loss of green open space, because just the fact that you're going to need to have access to this site. There's going to be extra road building, there's going to be car parking, and as you say, if there is going to be boundary fencing and gates and things like that, all of that is going to take up the green space that's already there. It's a wonderful open area of lots of green open space that people can use in a multitude of ways as they wish, and that's going to be reduced in some way. So it is, that's absolute, false to say that there's going to be no loss of green open space. And is it appropriate to change the use of this site to have burial provision there? Well, again, as many people have already said, the activities that are appropriate to kind of conduct in a cemetery setting are definitely not the kind of activities that are, many people enjoy in that area at the moment. I mean, it is possible for a cemetery to be a haven for wildlife, to be a relaxing area for people to take some leisure time. But the kinds of activities that would be appropriate to participate in a cemetery are not the same as the activities that people enjoy doing in the meadow at the moment. So, there's definitely some kind of, it's not right what's going on at the moment. And as for the ethics, I just don't feel like the public have been consulted properly or thoroughly on the proposals. There seems to be a lack of information. All of the research that I've tried to do over the last few days after I said I'd step in and have a go at talking about this, I've not been able to find any information really that's publicly accessible that can help me understand what the actual proposals are and how it's going to be implemented, what the time frame is, things like that. So there really isn't enough information available to the public. I believe there's been upwards of 700 complaints or opposition, letters of opposition to this particular proposal as it stands at the moment. So that just shows that the level of opposition that the public have. And as for, part of the reason why the Conservative Party didn't want to be involved in this evening's events is because of fairness and transparency. Well, it doesn't seem like the process so far has been very fair or transparent from the Conservative Party in terms of these proposals. So, yeah, I really don't think that this is something that should go ahead, certainly not in the form that it is. And if the figures that people are putting out saying how much it's going to cost, how much money is going to be spent, it really does feel like there could be another option. And I have read quite a lot about the extension to the Abbey facilities that there are at the moment, and it does to me feel like that would be better, even if that's just in terms of the fact that we can't have people transporting funeral corteges across the town. The amount of carbon that will emit when people are, plenty of cars going across the town, having the service maybe at the crematorium, and then maybe transporting things across town. It's not sustainable. It's not something I think in the current form anyway that is any good for the town. So that's what I would say.
Thank you very much for that, Victoria. Steve, do you want to come back on any of that?
No, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, let's go on to question 3. In fact, Victoria mentioned about that. No wonder, or Andrew, no wonder the Conservatives are not here. Well, what would he do? He'd have run away already, wouldn't he? My goodness me. Anyway, I'm supposed to be impartial. So let's move on to questions from Ivan, who I think has got a solution to all these problems that we've been posing. Thank you, Ivan.
Thank you, Ian. Yes, it's pretty obvious that the change of use to Ipsley Meadow proposed by the council is a major issue locally. And as has been said, there's well over 700 written objections to it from all parts of Redditch and some outside the district. Matchborough is already short of open space, and the loss of Ipsley Meadow would make the deficit even worse. My idea is to extend the existing Abbey Cemetery by the addition of 3 parcels of land, 2 of which are next to it, the third close by. With the increasing use of cremation, future demand for burial land will also constantly reduce, and consecutive additions of these 3 parcels of land over time will allow flexibility to respond to that trend. Also, on the matter of cost, for me, the expansion of the Abbey Cemetery would be much cheaper for the ratepayer, where essential staff and equipment are already on site. It would avoid unnecessary journeys across the town. And because the access roads and car parks exist at the Abbey Cemetery already, there would no need for this to arrive, as would be the case in Ipsley Meadow. The Ipsley Meadow proposal clashes with 37 open space protection policies in the written documents of the district and the county. And in the district local plan alone, there are 49 cross-references to the need to protect open space. I would like to hear your reactions and opinions on the idea of extending the Abbey Cemetery, and if you would press for it when you or one of you is elected on the 6th of May.
Thank you very much, Ivan. Well, again, quite a complicated question. I'm going to ask, to start this off, I'm going to ask Andrew Bevan again to kick us off on this one, Andrew. Really, it's should it be Ipsley Meadow or should it be the Abbey, I think?
Sorry, can I ask Mark to mute his camera, please? Because he's making a lot of noise and he's not actually involved.
I wondered what that was. I thought it was somebody in a tin can.
Sorry, Mark, I don't mean to be rude, mate. Can you just mute it? Thank you. Yeah, I've not actually heard Ivan's plan about the extension. I think it's fantastic. I mean, I need to look at it, obviously, to but just on face value, it's a bit of a no-brainer. There's already a crematorium there, obviously facilities for funerals. So, it gives people an option to bury their loved ones in Redditch without taking away green space. In terms of cost, if you're saying it's cheaper, again, bit of a no-brainer. So, yeah, I mean, I would like to, if you wouldn't mind emailing me those plans across, mate, that would be fantastic to have a look at. So obviously I've been looking at it playing, but if it turns out to be cheaper and obviously, a better fit, then yeah, it's definitely something I would support and look into.
I'll email them across to you.
Fantastic, thank you, Ivan.
Well, thank you, Ivan and Andrew. Probably one comment there, Ivan, so well done. Could we take I'll let Andy Thompson next, please. Could you, Andy, have a go at this one for us?
Certainly. I don't know whether Mark can hear this, but we can still hear you, Mark.
Yeah.
So could you put yourself on mute? I would text him, to be fair, but I've got my phone turned off because I don't want to hear the football score between Wolves and West Brom. So no spoilers, please. I think the short answer, Ivan, is yes. We fully support that. The Liberal Democrats back in September submitted an objection as a party to this. And as part of our objection, our recommendation was that that site be looked at as the alternative and as a preferable site. I think the idea of having the cemetery in Ipsley Meadow just doesn't make sense to me when we've got land there that could be used. I understand that there is a concern that some of the land there has been used to scatter ashes, and that people use that place as a place for reflection and solace. And I think something can be done to protect that. But at the same time, I think we need to be looking at that as a space to be used. The infrastructure is already there. The road system is already there. And it makes, for me, absolute sense to explore that option more fully.
Thank you, Andy. Could I ask Victoria to give us her answers to, or impressions of the questions about the differences between Ipsley Meadow as a new site and extend the Abbey site and all the various cost benefits of both? Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you. Yes, I have actually seen some of what Ivan's put together in terms of the plans for extending or the proposal to extend the Abbey site. And I would certainly say that that is something that needs to be investigated further in much more detail, because there are certainly benefits to that, you know, we've already got the infrastructure there. There would be no need to build, you know, additional roads. There's already a reasonable amount of car parking in the area. And also that area of the town is much better served by public transport. The Ipsley Meadow site is actually at the moment relatively inaccessible by methods of public transport and other methods of transport that are not car driving. So it would certainly be a better site in that sense. Also, what I think needs to be done at this point as well is to start maybe trying to think about other provisions of types of sites. So, for example, would it be possible to incorporate into this plan provision for a more eco burial? So, obviously, currently, cremation is very popular and is becoming more popular. And in our town, we've got the great fact that the Abbey Stadium uses the excess heat from the crematorium, so that is in terms of greener than just you know, traditional cremation. But would it be possible, especially as you say, there are sort of 3 potential areas to be developed that could be incorporated into expanding the cemetery at the Abbey site? Would be very interesting if within that it could be incorporated that there was a site that was for more green burial, because currently even conventional burial, even though it's better for the environment than cremation, there's still lots of potential problems associated with that. The chemicals and the caskets and things like that create issues that go into the groundwater, the chemicals that are used to embalm bodies, some of the chemicals that are used in caskets, some of the other metals and things that end up in caskets can cause terrible problems for the groundwater supply. And the fact that wherever site that gets used, there's quite a high proximity to the water supply. The River Arrow runs close to the Ipsley Meadow site, and it runs close to the site at the Abbey, so it would be important to try and put things in place to make sure. But I certainly think that there's a lot of mileage in exploring what Ivan's proposing, and we would support looking into that, you know, in a lot more detail, and potentially other sites as well, because it seems at the moment, from what I've seen, that the Ipsley Meadow site is the least appropriate place to put this cemetery in Redditch. So that would be my thoughts on the matter.
Thank you very much, Victoria, and everybody. Ivan, do you need to come back on anything?
Well, just 2 points. There was a reference to use of the area where ashes are scattered. That is not part of my proposal. When I met Matt Dormer on site to discuss it, he'd got the same idea into his head as well, and I do not know where that's come from. The first expansion area would be east of the existing Abbey Cemetery, and that does not include the ashes spreading area. Now, the other question about eco burials, very good question, and absolutely right. There are 2 other areas that I've proposed for addition to the cemetery, and one of them could be designated for eco burials, no doubt at all.
Thanks very much for that, Ivan, and also some fantastic things from everybody. Victoria, I'd rather forgotten about the pollution problem. It was raised early on in the Meadow debate, I remember, but thanks for reminding us about that. Now, Juliet, could you wind up for us on the 3rd question?
Thank you very much. Ivan, this is an absolutely cracking idea. It's cleaner, it's greener, and it's the most sensible option. And certainly I will be pushing all I can to ensure that this is on the table and it will be looked at. There's other issues as well around this. I know that we have the monument, but there is a precedent for building on monuments, and that is Dudley Castle, as Ivan has told me on a few occasions. The other thing as well is about the leisure offer, and I'm not sure whether you're aware, but there are people who really enjoy going around cemeteries, and we would have Maudsley Abbey right next to the older part of the cemetery with the newer, and you could in fact encourage people to come round and look at our cemeteries and have it as a leisure option. Now, I know that sounds a bit odd, but there are definitely people out there who like to look at the cemeteries. It's not going to be as expensive as the Ipsley site. There's no great slope, and certainly won't affect us in the sense that we'll be able to go and walk around Ipsley Meadow whenever we want, rather than climbing over the fence. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Juliet. That's our Ivan, did you want to come back, or?
Well, the reference to the tourism attraction, I described it as 900 years of burials in Redditch, and that is what they would find in that area.
Well, indeed. In fact, I think Ivan suggested that I might dress up as a monk, I think, didn't you? And take tours around the borders.
Ivan, could I ask you, perhaps for the benefit of maybe some of our candidates who may not know fully what scheduled monument land is? I know you lay it out very clearly in your proposal, but very briefly, could you explain what that is and how it can be overcome, if you like?
Scheduled monuments are defined in a list prepared and maintained by Historic England. And to get approval for development on scheduled land, you must first do an archaeological survey. And the first stage in my proposal is to do that, to do an archaeological survey on the piece of land that I've suggested. That means that for historians in the future, they would have everything written down that is of interest on that piece of land. And if anything of particular interest is found, then of course it could be protected. The second stage is that there would be a planning application to apply for an extension of the cemetery, and also an application to Historic England to approve the use of part of the scheduled monument for burying people from Redditch. It's as simple as that. It's rather straightforward, and do not be put off by the historians who will hold their arms up and start wailing, no, you can't possibly do that. That's a scheduled monument. Not right. There's been reference to Dudley Zoo. I know one in Liverpool where a former client of mine was living in an apartment in a converted scheduled monument. There's one in Bradford that's recently been done around a Roman fort, a temporary Roman fort that was involved in a housing development. And the list could go on. I've tried to find a comprehensive list, but it's difficult. But I know for a fact that it is no obstacle, if it's dealt with properly, to extend onto a scheduled monument.
Well, thanks very much for that, Ivan. What tremendous wisdom we have there in solving the problem. I'd like to say thank you very much to everybody for attending tonight, to Victoria from the Greens, to Andy Thompson from the Lib Dems, to Juliet in the Independents, and from Andrew Bevan, our Labour candidate and Labour councillor for Matchborough. I'd also like to thank our questioners, Hazel Hill, Steve Williams, and Ivan. I'd just like to say, perhaps in finishing, in tidying this up, that we've seemed to have covered tonight lots of areas in three excellent questions, three outstanding, I think 4 outstanding candidates, 3 very searching questions. And it seems to me, to wind this all up, that we have here with the panel and what we've discussed tonight, we have not only the solutions, but it seems we have the wisdom, the passion, and the drive to carry them out. I thank you all, say good night to you all, and remember our people on our Facebook that this is going on Facebook and going on our Hustings site in the morning. So thank you all and good night.
Night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Take care now.